Have you ever wondered what you would do if you discovered a dangerous secret that powerful people were willing to protect at any cost? What if speaking the truth meant losing your job, your reputation, and maybe even your safety? The morning sun had barely risen over the industrial district when Emma Carter parked her old silver sedan outside one of the country's most secure military manufacturing facilities. Thick security fences surrounded the massive complex, while surveillance cameras watched every corner of the entrance. Workers carrying coffee mugs and lunchboxes quietly walked through the front gate, preparing for another long shift. For everyone else, it was just another ordinary workday. But for Emma, it was the beginning of a mission that could change everything. She sat silently inside her car for a few moments. Her eyes carefully studied the entrance, the security checkpoint, and every camera mounted around the building. She wasn't nervous because of her new job. She was nervous because she already knew something inside this factory wasn't right. Taking a deep breath, Emma picked up her medical bag and stepped out of the vehicle. Hidden safely beneath the driver's seat remained another phone that nobody inside the factory knew existed. It would only be used if everything went terribly wrong. Inside the security station, one of the guards checked her temporary employee badge. Name: Emma Carter. Department: Occupational Health. He nodded and pointed toward the scanner. Any electronics? Just my personal phone. Emma placed her phone inside the tray, while her medical bag passed through the scanner without any questions. Within seconds, she was allowed to enter the building. Nobody searched further. Nobody suspected anything. That was exactly what she expected. Inside the administration office, a cheerful HR coordinator named Rachel Morgan welcomed Emma with a smile. "We're really happy to have you here," Rachel said while handing over several documents. "Our previous nurse resigned unexpectedly, so we've been struggling without proper medical support." Emma politely smiled while carefully reading every document before signing. She noticed confidentiality agreements, medical privacy forms, incident reporting procedures, emergency response protocols. She signed each one without rushing. When Rachel finished organizing the paperwork, she stood up. "I'll show you your clinic first." Emma gently shook her head. "I'd actually like to see the entire facility before I settle in." Rachel looked slightly surprised. "Most new employees don't ask for that. I need to know exactly how fast I can reach someone if they're injured." Rachel smiled. "That makes sense." The two women began walking through the enormous production building. The factory looked modern but complicated. Long concrete hallways connected different production sections. Heavy machines filled the air with constant mechanical sounds. Warning signs reminded workers to wear eye protection, hearing protection, and safety equipment. As Rachel explained each department, Emma quietly observed something else. She counted emergency exits. She memorized security cameras. She noticed which doors required special access cards. She even checked emergency medical equipment mounted along the hallways. Then something immediately caught her attention. An emergency defibrillator hung inside a wall cabinet. Emma walked toward it. She opened the cabinet and carefully checked the inspection label. The battery inspection was overdue. Months overdue. When was this tested? Emma asked calmly. Rachel looked uncomfortable. "I'm not really sure." Emma examined the battery indicator. Low power. She slowly closed the cabinet. "This battery needs replacing today." Rachel laughed softly. "You've only been here for a few minutes." Emma looked directly at her. "Medical emergencies don't wait until paperwork is finished." Rachel's smile slowly disappeared. "I'll send the request immediately." Emma nodded. That was exactly the answer she wanted. As the tour continued, they entered the pressure testing department. Unlike the noisy assembly area, this section felt strangely quiet. Large reinforced testing chambers stood behind thick steel doors. Bright warning lights flashed whenever pressure tests were running. Rachel pointed toward one chamber. This department performs stress testing on communication units before they're shipped. Emma silently watched through a reinforced observation window. Inside, a young technician carefully monitored a complicated testing machine. His name tag read, Daniel Brooks. He looked experienced, focused, careful. Emma noticed a fresh burn mark along one side of his hand. When the testing cycle finished, Rachel introduced them. Daniel, this is Emma, our new occupational health nurse. Daniel politely shook her hand. Emma immediately noticed him hiding his injured palm. What happened to your hand? Daniel hesitated. Just a small accident. Did you receive treatment? I cleaned it myself. Emma looked directly into his eyes. Please visit the clinic before your shift ends. Daniel looked like he wanted to refuse. Instead, he quietly nodded. As Rachel led Emma away, Daniel continued watching her. Something about the new nurse felt different. She wasn't simply following company procedures. She was paying attention. Really paying attention. Later that afternoon, Emma finally reached her small medical clinic located between two production wings. The room was organized poorly. Emergency supplies were scattered everywhere. Medical equipment hadn't been checked properly. The oxygen tank was almost empty. Several first aid supplies had already expired. Emma immediately began reorganizing everything. She replaced expired materials. She rearranged emergency equipment. She submitted requests for new medical supplies. She even ordered another trauma kit closer to the testing department. Most people would have accepted things as they were. Emma never did. Because experience had taught her something important. Small signs often hide much bigger problems. And deep inside, she had a feeling this factory was hiding something far more dangerous than expired medical supplies. To be continued. The next afternoon, just a few minutes before the evening shift ended, there was a soft knock on the clinic door. Emma looked up from her desk. Standing outside was Daniel Brooks. Without saying much, he slowly raised his injured hand. You asked me to stop by. Emma smiled politely. I'm glad you came. She pointed toward the examination chair. Daniel sat down while Emma carefully removed the old bandage from his palm. The burn wasn't severe, but something about it didn't look normal. The skin showed signs of electrical exposure rather than simple heat. Emma cleaned the wound carefully before speaking again. When exactly did this happen? About 4 days ago. Was an official incident report filed? Daniel nodded. Yes. And what happened after that? Daniel looked toward the clinic door as if making sure nobody was listening. Emma quietly stood up, walked over and locked it. You can speak freely, she said. Daniel took a slow breath. The report was changed. Emma stopped writing for a second. What do you mean? I reported an equipment malfunction. And when I checked the report later, it said the accident happened because I ignored safety procedures. Emma looked directly at him. Did you? Daniel answered without hesitation. No. Emma continued treating his hand. Tell me exactly what happened. Daniel leaned forward. The testing machine sometimes behaves strangely. What kind of strange? After the pressure cycle finishes, the system says the machine is safe. Emma nodded. But Daniel paused. Sometimes it isn't. Emma waited. The green safety light comes on. But the electrical current is still flowing. She slowly lowered her pen. Has anyone else seen this? Daniel nodded. Everyone who works in Chamber 4. Did they report it? We all did. What happened? Daniel gave a bitter smile. Every report disappeared. Emma remained silent. Daniel continued. Some reports blamed technicians. Others blamed equipment setup. But none of them mentioned the machine itself. Emma carefully wrote every word inside her notebook. When does it usually happen? Mostly during long pressure tests. Anything unusual before the malfunction? Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, trying to remember. There's always a strange metallic click. A click? Yes. Normally the machine releases pressure immediately. But when something goes wrong, the click comes first. Then everything becomes silent. For 1, maybe 2 seconds. And after that, the pressure suddenly releases all at once. Emma underlined several words inside her notebook. Anything else? Daniel nodded again. The equipment smells different. Different how? Like burned wires. Those words immediately caught Emma's attention. Burned wires. She had heard those exact words years earlier during another investigation. She had never forgotten. She remained calm. If it happens again. Daniel interrupted. I'll shut the machine down. Emma slowly shook her head. No. Daniel looked confused. Step away from it. But what if production stops? Emma answered quietly. Machines can be repaired. People can't. Daniel finally left the clinic. Emma sat alone for several minutes. She wasn't thinking about the burn anymore. She was thinking about patterns. Delayed pressure release. Electrical burns. Burned wiring smell. Reports being rewritten. Too many small details pointed toward the same problem. Late that afternoon, Emma decided to inspect chamber 4 herself. She waited until another pressure test began. Standing outside the observation window, she carefully watched every movement. Inside, technicians monitored computer screens while the machine slowly increased pressure. Everything appeared completely normal. Until... Click. A sharp metallic sound echoed inside the chamber. Emma immediately looked toward the pressure gauge. It stopped moving. 1 second passed. Then another. Nobody inside the room spoke. Every technician simply stared at the machine. Suddenly, a loud burst of steam exploded from the pressure valve. The chamber vibrated. One worker instinctively stepped backward. Emma quickly entered the room the moment the safety light turned green. She noticed one technician reaching toward the testing frame. Don't touch it. Her voice echoed across the chamber. Everyone froze. The technician looked confused. But the system says it's safe. Emma pointed toward the lower section of the machine. Tiny blue sparks were jumping between 2 metal connectors. The room became completely silent. The technician immediately stepped backward. Another worker whispered, "How is it still live?" Emma slowly crouched beside the equipment without touching it. A thin trail of smoke rose from one small ceramic component. The smell reached her almost instantly. Burned electrical insulation. Exactly as Daniel had described. Exactly. She carefully examined the surface from a safe distance. A thin black line had appeared along one side of the ceramic housing. It looked almost like a tiny crack. Not large enough for most people to notice, but impossible for Emma to ignore. She looked toward the workers. Turn off the main power supply. One technician hesitated. If I stop the system, management will ask questions. Emma answered firmly. They can ask all the questions they want. But nobody touches this machine until the electricity is completely disconnected. The technician looked around the room. Finally, he ran toward the emergency power controls. Seconds later, the electrical humming disappeared. Only then did Emma slowly stand up. She looked back at the damaged component. Something inside told her this wasn't an isolated accident. This was the first real piece of evidence. And somewhere inside this factory, someone already knew it existed. Emma stayed inside Chamber 4 for several more minutes after the power had been shut down. The workers gathered around the damaged machine but kept a safe distance. Nobody wanted to be the first person to touch it. Emma carefully examined the relay housing without making physical contact. The black mark running across the ceramic surface was now easier to see. It wasn't a scratch. It wasn't dirt. It looked like damage caused by electricity escaping from inside the unit. Emma turned toward Daniel. Has this happened before? Daniel slowly nodded. More than once. Then why hasn't this machine been taken out of service? Daniel looked uncomfortable. It should have been. But every time something happened, production continued. Emma looked around the room. Several technicians quietly lowered their eyes. None of them disagreed. That silence spoke louder than any words. Emma removed a small inspection camera from her medical bag and documented the damaged housing from different angles. She also recorded the exact time, testing chamber number, and the names of every employee who had witnessed the incident. Everything needed to be documented. Every detail mattered. Back inside her clinic, Emma immediately opened the company's incident reporting system. She began writing carefully. She avoided emotional language. She included only facts. Location, Chamber 4. Incident. Electrical hazard after pressure testing. Observation. Green safety indicator activated while electrical current remained present. Result: potential serious injury avoided. Recommendation: immediate shutdown of chamber 4 and a full independent safety inspection before any further testing. After reading the report twice, Emma pressed the submit button. The system confirmed the report had been received. She quietly wrote the report number inside her personal notebook. Then she leaned back in her chair. For the first time that day, she felt hopeful. Surely no responsible company would ignore something this serious. The following morning, Emma arrived earlier than usual. She walked directly to her computer. Before checking emails, before making coffee, she opened yesterday's incident report. Her heart immediately skipped a beat. The report looked different. Someone had changed it. Emma slowly scrolled through the document. Her original description was gone. The recommendation to shut down Chamber 4 had completely disappeared. Even worse, the official conclusion now read: minor employee contact caused by failure to maintain proper working distance from energized equipment. Emma stared at the screen. That wasn't what she had written. Not even close. She quickly opened her notebook. Fortunately, she had copied every important detail by hand before leaving the previous evening. She compared both versions line by line. Someone had rewritten the entire report. And whoever had done it wanted the machine to stay in operation. Emma quietly copied the new version into her notebook as well. Now she had proof that the report had been changed. Just as Emma finished writing, movement outside the clinic window caught her attention. She looked up. Walking across the production floor was the operations director. His name was Victor Reynolds. He moved confidently through the factory, while supervisors followed closely behind him. Workers stepped aside as he passed. Nobody smiled. Nobody greeted him. Emma watched him carefully. Victor suddenly stopped walking. Then, he slowly turned his head toward the clinic. For several long seconds, their eyes met through the window. Victor wasn't smiling. He wasn't angry either. He simply stared. Then he continued walking without saying a word. Emma quietly closed her notebook. Something told her this wasn't a coincidence. Someone already knew she had noticed the changes. Later that afternoon, while organizing medical supplies, Emma discovered a folded piece of paper lying beneath the clinic door. She immediately looked outside. The hallway was empty. No footsteps. No voices. No sign of who had left it. She locked the clinic before unfolding the paper. Inside, someone had handwritten several dates. Next to each date was a short description. Electrical burn. Pressure failure. Signal interruption. Unexpected shutdown. One final note had been written at the bottom. They know the relay is failing. Emma read the sentence again. Then again. There was no signature. No handwriting she recognized. Just one anonymous warning. She carefully placed the note beside her notebook. If the information was true, this wasn't just one accident. It was a pattern. And someone inside the factory wanted her to find it. At the end of the workday, Emma quietly walked back toward Chamber 4. Another pressure test had already started. Through the observation glass, she watched the familiar machine begin another testing cycle. The pressure slowly increased. The technicians remained silent. Then, click. The same strange metallic sound echoed through the chamber. Emma's eyes immediately locked onto the pressure gauge. Without realizing it, she held her breath, because deep inside, she already knew something was about to go wrong again. The next morning, Emma arrived nearly an hour before her shift officially began. The parking lot was almost empty. A cold breeze moved across the silent factory grounds while the first rays of sunlight reflected from the massive steel building. Emma unlocked the clinic and immediately placed yesterday's anonymous note beside her notebook. She looked at every date listed on the paper. 7 separate incidents. 7 possible accidents. Or 7 attempts to hide the same dangerous problem. She opened the company's medical records one by one. Instead of randomly searching the database, she focused only on cases involving burns, electrical injuries, and pressure testing. She knew searching too much could attract attention. So she worked carefully, slowly, patiently. The first record matched one of the dates. A technician had suffered a burn to his wrist. The official report blamed improper handling of equipment. Emma quietly copied the report number into her notebook. The second date revealed another accident. This time a worker had complained about dizziness after leaving Chamber 4. The report described it as dehydration, but according to the treatment notes, the worker had arrived with minor electrical burns on 2 fingers. Emma frowned. Those details should never have disappeared. Yet somehow, they had. Over the next several hours, Emma continued comparing records. One by one, the same pattern appeared. Every serious incident started with equipment problems. Every final report blamed an employee. Every recommendation for technical inspection had vanished. It couldn't be coincidence. Someone was changing the records after they were submitted. Emma wrote another page inside her notebook. Electrical burn. Report changed. Pressure delay. Report changed. Equipment warning. Removed. The list kept growing. Around lunchtime, Daniel quietly entered the clinic. He looked nervous. "You shouldn't keep digging," he whispered. Emma looked up. "Why?" Daniel lowered his voice. "People are starting to notice." Emma calmly closed the medical file. "Ooh." Daniel hesitated. "I don't know exactly. But yesterday, I saw Victor Reynolds standing outside the records office." Emma listened carefully. He wasn't talking. He was just watching. Emma remained silent. Daniel continued. "And after you left, 2 supervisors went into Chamber 4. What were they doing?" "I don't know. They stayed inside almost an hour. When they came out, the damaged relay was gone." Emma slowly tightened her grip around her pen. "Gone?" Daniel nodded. "They replaced it before today's shift." Emma immediately stood. "If they removed the original component, then they removed the strongest physical evidence." Daniel quietly looked toward the clinic door. "What are you going to do?" Emma answered without hesitation. "I'm going to find out where it went." That afternoon, Emma walked through the production floor as if she were simply checking on employees. She greeted workers, asked about small injuries, checked first aid stations. Everything looked completely normal, but her eyes searched for something else. Storage labels, evidence lockers, restricted access rooms. Finally, she noticed a heavy steel door near the engineering department. A red sign read, "Authorized personnel," only just as Emma glanced toward the keypad. A voice spoke behind her. "Looking for something?" Emma turned around. Standing there was Victor Reynolds. His expression was calm, almost friendly. "I was checking emergency access routes," Emma replied naturally. Victor smiled. "Engineering doesn't usually need medical inspections." Emma returned the smile. "Emergencies don't ask for permission." Victor looked at her for several long seconds. Then he nodded. "I admire people who take their jobs seriously." He started walking away. After only a few steps, he stopped. Without turning around, he quietly said, "Sometimes asking too many questions creates unnecessary problems." Then he continued walking. Emma watched him disappear around the corner. The words sounded polite, but the message was unmistakable. It was a warning. Later that evening, after most employees had gone home, Emma stayed behind to finish paperwork. The factory became unusually quiet. Only distant machines could still be heard. As she organized patient files, someone knocked softly on the clinic window. Emma looked up. Standing outside was a young woman wearing a white engineering coat. She looked nervous. Very nervous. Emma opened the door. The woman quickly stepped inside. "My name is Olivia Grant." Emma recognized her immediately. She worked in the engineering department. Olivia looked over both shoulders before speaking. "We don't have much time." Emma quietly locked the clinic door. "What is it?" Olivia swallowed nervously. "The relay was never supposed to pass testing." Emma's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Olivia took a deep breath. "Nearly 2 years ago, our engineering team discovered tiny cracks forming inside the ceramic housing during long pressure tests." Emma said nothing. Olivia continued. The cracks were invisible at first, but after enough pressure, electricity could escape through the housing. Emma immediately remembered the black mark she had seen inside Chamber 4. Olivia's voice became even quieter. We submitted a recommendation. What recommendation? Stop shipments until the design was corrected. Emma slowly leaned forward. What happened? Olivia looked down. Our report was rejected. And the testing procedure was changed. Emma felt her heartbeat quicken. They changed the testing? Olivia nodded. They shortened every pressure cycle. So the cracks never had enough time to appear. The room fell completely silent. Emma finally understood. The machines weren't passing because they were safe. They were passing because someone had changed the rules. And if Olivia was telling the truth, thousands of defective relay units might already have been shipped. Emma slowly opened her notebook. This investigation had just become much bigger than anyone imagined. Emma slowly looked up from her notebook. Neither she nor Olivia spoke for several seconds. The silence inside the clinic felt heavier than ever. Finally, Emma asked the question that mattered most. If the company already knew about the defect, why did production continue? Olivia let out a slow breath. Because fixing it would have cost millions. Emma remained expressionless. And delaying military contracts would have cost even more. Olivia's hands trembled slightly as she held a small brown envelope against her chest. I shouldn't even be here. Emma noticed how nervous she looked. You came anyway. Olivia nodded. Because someone has to stop this. She slowly placed the envelope onto Emma's desk. Inside was a folded engineering document. Emma carefully opened it. Across the first page, bold letters read, Internal Engineering Evaluation. Below the title appeared several technical diagrams showing the ceramic relay housing. One section had been highlighted in red. A handwritten note beside it simply said, Microfractures develop during extended pressure cycles. Emma continued reading. The report explained that repeated stress testing caused tiny cracks to form inside the ceramic shell. At first, the damage was almost impossible to detect. But after enough pressure, those tiny cracks could create electrical pathways. That meant electricity could escape outside the relay housing. Exactly what Emma had witnessed inside Chamber 4. Emma turned another page. Near the bottom appeared an official recommendation. Suspend production until additional testing is completed. She looked toward Olivia. Who wrote this? Our engineering department. And management approved it? Olivia slowly shook her head. No. What happened? The report disappeared. Emma frowned. Disappeared? A week later. We were ordered to use a shorter testing cycle. Emma immediately understood. The cracks never had enough time to appear. Olivia nodded. Exactly. Emma closed the document. This proves management knew. Olivia looked down. It proves they were warned. Emma carefully placed the papers back inside the envelope. This needs to stay safe. Olivia suddenly grabbed Emma's arm. They're watching. Emma looked into her eyes. Who? I don't know. But yesterday, I saw someone searching my office. Emma's expression remained calm. Did they find anything? Olivia slowly shook her head. I hid my copy somewhere else. Emma gave a small smile. Good. Olivia wasn't smiling. They're getting nervous. So should we. Emma quietly stood and walked toward the clinic door. She checked both sides of the hallway. Nobody. She locked the door again. Then she returned to her desk. If this document disappears, can you still prove it existed? Olivia thought for a moment. Yes. How? I memorized every meeting. Every date. Every signature. Emma nodded. Good. Because from this moment on, they'll try to erase everything. After Olivia quietly left the clinic, Emma carefully removed a blank notebook from her desk drawer. She never trusted keeping only one copy of important information. Instead of photographing the engineering report, she copied every single detail by hand. Every date. Every recommendation. Every technical observation. Every signature. It took almost 40 minutes. When she finished, she placed the original report inside a sealed medical evidence bag. Then she locked it inside a cabinet used only for confidential patient records. Nobody inside the factory had access without her permission. Or so she hoped. The following morning, Emma noticed something unusual. Workers who normally smiled no longer greeted her. Several supervisors stopped talking whenever she walked past. Even Daniel seemed unusually nervous. When Emma met him near Chamber 4, he quietly whispered, "They've started asking questions." What kind of questions? They wanted to know how often I visit the clinic. Emma remained calm. What did you tell them? The truth. That I came because of my burned hand. Emma nodded. Good. Daniel looked around before speaking again. They also asked if you've been writing notes. Emma's eyes narrowed. Who asked? Victor Reynolds. Emma wasn't surprised. She had expected this. The investigation was getting closer to the truth, and someone inside management had begun to panic. That afternoon, Emma walked back toward the production floor. As she passed the engineering offices, she noticed one door standing slightly open. Inside, several supervisors were gathered around a conference table. Victor Reynolds stood at the front. Emma couldn't hear every word, but one sentence reached her clearly. Before federal inspectors become involved. The room immediately fell silent. Someone had noticed Emma standing outside. Victor slowly turned his head toward the doorway. For the second time that week, their eyes met. This time, neither of them smiled. Emma quietly continued walking without saying a word. But deep inside, she knew something had changed. Management wasn't simply hiding accidents anymore. They were preparing for something much bigger. And whatever it was happening very soon. The rest of the afternoon passed quietly. Too quietly. Emma couldn't stop thinking about the conversation she had overheard outside the conference room. One sentence kept repeating in her mind. Before federal inspectors become involved. Who were they expecting? And why did management suddenly seem so nervous? She returned to the clinic and opened her notebook once again. Every page told the same story. Electrical burns. Delayed pressure releases. Changed reports. Hidden engineering warnings. None of them looked important by themselves. But together, they formed a picture that could no longer be ignored. Emma knew she needed more than handwritten notes. She needed proof that management had intentionally changed the testing process. Without that, everything could still be dismissed as misunderstanding. Late that evening, after most employees had gone home, Emma quietly walked through the nearly empty production building. The lights above the main assembly floor were dim. Only a handful of technicians remained on overtime. As she passed the engineering department, she noticed something unusual. One office light was still on. The name beside the door read, Olivia Grant. Emma gently knocked. Come. Olivia looked exhausted. Engineering drawings covered her desk, while several computer screens displayed technical diagrams of the relay housing. Emma closed the door behind her. I need to ask you something. Olivia nodded. I thought you might. Emma placed her notebook on the desk. You told me the testing procedure was changed. Yes. Who approved it? Olivia remained silent for a moment. Then she opened one of the drawers in her desk. She removed an old blue folder. I hoped I'd never need this. Emma slowly opened the folder. Inside were copies of meeting minutes from nearly 2 years earlier. Each page contained signatures from senior managers. One signature appeared several times. Victor Reynolds. Another belonged to the factory director, Richard Lawson. Emma carefully read every page. One sentence immediately caught her attention. Extended pressure validation removed to maintain production schedule. She looked up. They actually wrote this? Olivia nodded. They believed nobody outside the company would ever read it. Emma continued reading. Another document described a private management meeting. According to the notes, engineers had warned that longer testing cycles exposed dangerous structural weaknesses inside the relay housing. Management had two options: redesign the product, or shorten the tests. They chose the second option. Not because it made the product safer, because it made the defect invisible. Emma slowly closed the folder. How many people know about this? Olivia sighed. Very few. What happened to the others? Some resigned. Some were transferred. And a few simply stopped asking questions. Emma understood exactly what that meant. Fear had done the rest. She carefully copied the meeting dates into her notebook. Every detail mattered. Every signature mattered even more. Suddenly, someone knocked hard against the office door. Both women froze. Another knock. Louder this time. Olivia quickly gathered the documents. Emma slipped her notebook inside her coat. Who is it? Olivia asked. A familiar voice answered from outside. Victor Reynolds. Neither woman moved. Victor knocked again. I know you're still inside. Olivia looked at Emma. Emma calmly whispered, stay calm. Olivia opened the door only halfway. Victor smiled politely. Working late again? Olivia forced a smile. We're finishing some engineering files. Victor looked past her shoulder. His eyes landed on Emma. I didn't expect to find our nurse here. Emma answered confidently. I came to ask about employee safety. Victor stepped slightly closer. Engineering usually doesn't require medical consultations after business hours. Emma smiled. Safety doesn't follow office hours. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. Victor's eyes moved around the office. He noticed the open folder on the desk. He noticed Emma's notebook. But he said nothing. Finally, he smiled once more. I hope you're both getting enough rest. Then he slowly walked away. Olivia closed the door and immediately locked it. Her hands were shaking. He knows. Emma nodded. Yes. But he still doesn't know how much we know. The following morning, Emma arrived at the clinic expecting another normal day. Instead, she found every cabinet door standing open. Medical files covered the floor. Boxes had been emptied. Drawers had been searched. Nothing appeared stolen. But everything had been disturbed. Someone had entered the clinic overnight. Emma immediately walked toward the locked medical cabinet. Her heartbeat became faster. She unlocked it. Inside, the sealed evidence bag was still there. She quietly closed her eyes in relief. Whoever searched the room had missed the most important document. Or, they had been looking for something else. Emma slowly turned around. On top of her desk, a single white envelope waited. There was no name, no company logo, no handwriting, only 4 typed words. Stop asking questions, Emma. She stared at the message without touching it. The warning wasn't meant to frighten her. It was meant to make her stop. Instead, it convinced her she was getting closer than ever to exposing the truth. She carefully placed the envelope inside another evidence bag. From that moment on, every threat became evidence. Every warning became another piece of the puzzle. And somewhere inside the factory, someone was beginning to realize that Emma Carter wasn't going to back down. Emma carefully sealed the anonymous warning inside an evidence bag before placing it in the locked cabinet. She refused to throw it away. Every threat mattered now. Every small detail could become important later. She looked around the clinic one more time. The cabinets had been opened. Patient files had been moved. Medical supplies were scattered across the floor. Whoever entered the room hadn't been searching randomly. They knew exactly what they were looking for. Emma slowly picked up each file and returned it to its proper place. As she worked, one question kept running through her mind. How had someone entered the clinic without leaving any sign of forced entry? Only a few people had authorized access. Either someone had copied her key, or someone with higher security clearance had unlocked the door. Neither answer was comforting. Just before lunchtime, Emma received a call from the reception desk. There are visitors arriving this afternoon. What kind of visitors? Emma asked. The quality inspection team. Emma immediately remembered the conversation she had overheard. Federal inspectors. Management had expected them. The timing couldn't be a coincidence. Emma thanked the receptionist and ended the call. If inspectors were coming, today might be her only chance to tell the truth. Meanwhile, on the production floor, supervisors suddenly became unusually active. Workers were instructed to clean every workstation. Warning signs were replaced with brand new ones. Fresh safety inspection stickers appeared on equipment that had looked neglected only days earlier. Emma quietly watched everything. It looked less like routine maintenance and more like preparation. Daniel walked into the clinic, carrying a small first aid request form. After the paperwork was finished, he leaned closer. "They've shut down Chamber 4. Emma looked surprised. "For repairs?" Daniel slowly shook his head. "No. They moved today's testing to Chamber 6. Emma frowned. "Why?" "So the inspectors won't see the damaged equipment." Emma immediately understood. Management wasn't fixing the problem. They were hiding it. She opened her notebook and wrote another line. Testing relocated before inspection. Another piece of the puzzle. Another attempt to avoid questions. That afternoon, 3 visitors wearing dark blue jackets entered the factory. Each carried identification badges and thick inspection folders. Supervisors welcomed them with friendly smiles. Victor Reynolds personally greeted them at the entrance. Emma watched from across the hallway. Everything looked carefully planned. Every route, every conversation, every demonstration. The inspectors were being shown exactly what management wanted them to see, not what they needed to see. As the inspection tour continued, Emma noticed something unexpected. One of the inspectors quietly stepped away from the group. He appeared to be checking emergency exits on his own. His name badge read, Michael Hayes. Unlike the others, he wasn't rushing. He carefully examined safety equipment, checked maintenance labels, looked inside emergency cabinets. Emma decided to approach him. "Good afternoon." Michael smiled politely. "You must be the medical officer." "Occupational health nurse," Emma replied. "I've heard good things about your department." Emma almost smiled. "That's kind of surprising." Michael noticed the hesitation in her voice. "Is something wrong?" Emma looked around the hallway. Several supervisors were standing only a short distance away. This wasn't the place. Not yet. Instead, she simply answered, "Safety always deserves a closer look." Michael studied her expression for a moment. Then he quietly slipped a business card into her hand. "If you ever need to report something, my direct number is on the back." Without another word, he rejoined the inspection group. Emma looked down at the card. Hidden beneath the printed phone number was a handwritten message. "Not everyone is being watched." She quickly slipped the card into her pocket before anyone noticed. Someone inside the inspection team already suspected something wasn't right. Later that evening, after the visitors had left, Emma returned to her clinic. She locked the door and took out the card again. Before she could read it once more, her phone vibrated. An unknown number. She answered carefully. "Hello." For several seconds, nobody spoke. Only silence. Then a calm male voice finally said, "You don't have much time." Emma's grip tightened around the phone. "Who is this?" The caller ignored the question. "They're moving the old relay tonight." Emma stood up immediately. "What relay?" "The one from Chamber 4. The evidence won't be here by morning." The line went silent for a brief moment. Then the caller added one final sentence. "If you want the truth, go to Warehouse 9. The call disconnected. Emma stared at the phone. No name. No number. No explanation. Only a location. Warehouse 9. She opened the factory map hanging on her wall. The warehouse sat near the back of the property, far away from the production buildings, far away from employees. Almost nobody had a reason to go there after dark. Emma looked at the clock. There was still time. If the caller was telling the truth, the most important evidence in the entire investigation was about to disappear forever. She picked up her flashlight, locked the clinic behind her, and quietly stepped into the dark hallway. Without knowing it, someone was already watching her from the shadows. Emma moved quietly through the dark service corridor, keeping her flashlight switched off. Only the emergency lights along the walls gave her enough light to see where she was going. Every step echoed through the empty building. She glanced at the factory map one more time. Warehouse 9 was less than 500 feet away. It sat behind the main production building, separated from the rest of the facility by a chain-link fence and a narrow service road. The anonymous caller's warning replayed in her mind. The evidence won't be here by morning. If that was true, she had only one chance. She crossed the service road and stopped behind a stack of shipping containers. From there, she could clearly see Warehouse 9. A single security light illuminated the loading dock. A white company truck was parked beside the entrance with its rear doors open. 2 workers were loading sealed wooden crates into the truck. Emma stayed hidden. She wasn't interested in the workers. She was watching the crates. One of them had a bright red label. Engineering disposal. Her heartbeat quickened. Why would damaged engineering equipment be removed in the middle of the night? She quietly took out her notebook and wrote down the truck number. Then she memorized the license plate. If the truck disappeared, she would still have a record. Just then, the warehouse door opened again. Victor Reynolds walked outside. He looked around the yard before speaking to one of the workers. Emma couldn't hear every word, but she clearly heard one sentence. Make sure nothing stays behind. The worker nodded. Victor checked his watch. Finish before midnight. Then he walked back inside. Emma waited patiently until he disappeared. She needed to know what was inside those crates. A few minutes later, one of the workers entered the warehouse to retrieve another box. The second worker answered a phone call and walked several steps away from the truck. It was the opportunity Emma had been waiting for. She silently crossed the loading area. Within seconds she reached the open truck. The first crate was filled with broken machine covers. The second contained damaged cables. The third held old testing sensors. Nothing unusual. Then she reached the fourth crate. Unlike the others, it had been sealed with fresh security tape. Emma carefully lifted one corner, without tearing it. Inside, wrapped in protective foam, was a familiar ceramic relay housing. A long black burn mark stretched across one side. There was no doubt. It was the damaged relay from Chamber 4. Emma quickly examined the evidence bag attached to it. Instead of a repair tag, it carried a disposal label. Someone wasn't sending it for investigation. They were destroying it. Emma quietly pulled out her phone and took several photographs from different angles. She captured the burn mark, the serial number, the disposal label, and the crate identification code. She had barely finished when footsteps echoed from inside the warehouse. Emma carefully closed the crate exactly as she had found it. Then she slipped beneath the side of the loading platform just seconds before the worker returned. He never noticed her. The crate was loaded onto the truck. The rear door slammed shut. Emma remained perfectly still until the truck engine started. Only after the vehicle slowly drove away did she crawl out from beneath the platform. She watched the truck disappear through the factory gate. At least now, she had proof that someone was trying to remove critical evidence. Emma quietly entered Warehouse 9 through the side entrance. The building smelled of oil, dust, and old machinery. Rows of metal shelves stretched across the enormous room. Some held damaged equipment. Others contained sealed boxes marked for disposal. She slowly walked deeper inside. Near the back wall, she discovered a metal filing cabinet standing slightly open. Inside were dozens of maintenance folders. Most contained ordinary repair records. But one thick folder immediately caught her attention. The cover read, Restricted Engineering Review. Emma carefully opened it. The first page listed serial numbers. The second listed inspection dates. Then, she found exactly what she had been searching for. A chart comparing the original pressure testing cycle with the new shortened procedure. The difference was impossible to ignore. The old test lasted long enough to reveal dangerous failures. The new test ended before the relay reached its breaking point. The defect hadn't disappeared. The test had simply been shortened so no one would see it. Emma quickly photographed every page. As she reached the final document, she froze. It was a signed approval form. At the bottom were 2 signatures. One belonged to Victor Reynolds. The other belonged to factory director Richard Lawson. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't negligence. It was a deliberate decision. Emma carefully returned every document exactly where she had found it. Just as she closed the cabinet, she heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind her. Slow, steady, getting closer. She switched off her flashlight. The warehouse fell into darkness. A voice echoed through the silent building. "I know someone is in here." Emma remained completely still behind a row of storage shelves. The footsteps stopped. Then another voice quietly said, "Search every aisle." Emma realized she wasn't alone anymore. Someone had discovered that an unexpected visitor had entered Warehouse 9. Emma pressed herself against the cold metal shelves, barely daring to breathe. The warehouse was almost completely dark now. Only a few ceiling lights near the entrance remained on, casting long shadows across the floor. The voices grew louder. "Check every storage row. Nobody leaves until the building is clear." Flashlights suddenly cut through the darkness. Bright beams swept across the concrete floor. Emma stayed perfectly still. She knew that even one careless movement could reveal her location. A pair of security officers slowly entered the aisle beside her. One of them stopped. "Did you hear that?" The second guard listened carefully. "I thought I did." Emma held her breath. Several long seconds passed. Then a loud crash echoed from the opposite side of the warehouse. Both guards immediately turned toward the noise. It came from row 7. They hurried away. Emma quietly exhaled. Someone else had made that noise. But who? She cautiously looked around the corner. At the far end of another aisle, she noticed a dark figure disappearing behind a stack of shipping pallets. The person clearly wasn't one of the security guards. Whoever it was, they had intentionally distracted them. Emma didn't waste the opportunity. She moved silently toward the back section of the warehouse. Hidden behind dozens of old storage racks stood a locked steel cage labeled "Archived Engineering Records." Unlike the other storage areas, this section looked untouched for years. Dust covered every shelf. Boxes were stacked almost to the ceiling. Emma noticed that the cage door wasn't fully closed. Someone had unlocked it recently. She slipped inside. Inside the cage were hundreds of storage boxes arranged by year. Emma carefully checked the labels. 5 years ago. 4 years ago. 3 years ago. Then she found a box marked Project Atlas. Safety reviews. Her pulse quickened. She placed the box on a nearby table and slowly lifted the lid. Inside were dozens of engineering reports, maintenance logs, inspection summaries, and internal emails. She quickly skimmed through the documents. One report immediately caught her attention. Emergency Design Assessment. The report explained that engineers had discovered repeated failures during extended stress testing. Several relay units had overheated. Others had developed electrical leakage. One sentence had been highlighted with a red marker. Continued production may create an unacceptable safety risk. Emma slowly turned the page. Attached behind it was another document. This one carried a bold stamp across the top. Rejected. Someone hadn't just ignored the warning. They had officially rejected it. Emma continued reading. An internal memo followed. It stated that redesigning the relay would delay several important contracts and increase manufacturing costs significantly. The final recommendation shocked her. Proceed with modified testing procedures until future design revisions become economically practical. Emma stared at the sentence. Human safety had been placed below financial concerns. There was no misunderstanding anymore. The danger had been known from the very beginning. Blueheart, if stories like this keep you glued to the screen, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and share this video before the next twist. Just then, she heard footsteps again. Much closer this time. Emma quickly returned the documents to the box. Before she could close the lid completely, she noticed a small flash drive taped beneath the bottom panel. It had been carefully hidden, almost impossible to notice. She quietly removed it and slipped it into her pocket. At that exact moment, a flashlight beam swept across the entrance of the archive cage. Someone's been in here. One guard stepped inside. Emma immediately ducked behind the shelving units. Another guard joined him. The dust's been disturbed. Search carefully. Emma's heart pounded. The two guards slowly walked between the shelves. One more step, and they would find her. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the warehouse entrance. Everyone to the loading dock. The guard stopped. What happened? We've got a problem outside. Without asking another question, both guards hurried out of the archive room. Emma waited nearly a full minute before moving. She quietly stepped outside the cage. Curious, she carefully looked toward the loading dock. Several workers had gathered around a company truck. Victor Reynolds stood near the vehicle, speaking angrily into his phone. Emma couldn't hear every word, but one sentence reached her clearly. The shipment is gone. One supervisor looked confused. What do you mean gone? The truck never arrived at the transfer station. Victor's face turned pale. Find it. Now. Emma immediately realized what had happened. The truck carrying the damaged relay had disappeared. Either someone had stolen it, or someone wanted everyone to believe it had vanished. Before she could think further, a gentle whisper came from behind her. Don't turn around. Emma froze. The voice continued quietly. If they see us talking, we're both finished. She recognized the voice. It belonged to Michael Hayes, the inspector she had met earlier. Without looking back, Emma whispered, "Why are you here?" Michael answered calmly, "Because this investigation is much bigger than you think." What do you mean? There isn't just one factory. There are others. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Michael continued, "The same defective relay has been shipped to multiple facilities across the country." Emma's eyes widened. This isn't a local cover-up. It's national. Before Emma could ask another question, Michael quietly slipped a folded piece of paper into her hand. Read it when you're alone. Then he disappeared into the darkness before anyone noticed him. Emma slowly closed her hand around the paper. Whatever was written inside, she knew it would change the investigation forever.